Welcome back to the Potter Discussion. This is episode 80. Today's episode we will be discussing character arcs, both the good and the bad. The question is, which ones are which? Let's get into it. Alright, that is the new intro song. Very amazing. I did in fact do it myself. I'm very proud of myself, but welcome back. This is the first episode of the new style of this podcast, and we're kicking it off with character arcs. Today's episode is going to be a slightly longer than the other episodes we've done, and if maybe you can check, you can see that it might be a little longer than the previous episodes, but today we are talking about character arcs, and character arcs are a very vital part of the Harry Potter story and how different characters evolve and create their own profile, how characters make themselves established in the world and have their role be played. And that's a very important part for both the character and the reader, us, because seeing different characters doing different things, we will categorize those characters as those people who don't do those specific things. And it's important that we recognize which character arcs are good and which character arcs are bad. So I have a couple different character arcs lined up for us today. I have gone through my brain. I've watched a couple of the episodes again just to make sure I'm up to date, and I think I am. So we're going to be talking about a lot of subjects today. We have a couple topics, subtopics, sessions. Let's just do it. This is episode 80, by the way, so that's pretty cool. So let's just kick it off. What makes a good character arc? Well, in my mind, a good character arc is change. If the character changes a very good amount, I would consider that arc to be good. And it's tough to decide change. It might be change in personality, change in ability, but I think the biggest change is emotional change, overcoming a big challenge or becoming someone else that can take on the hardships of the world much better. That's definitely a good character arc. And I don't know, just thinking of some good character arcs. Neville, Draco, and Snape. Those are the three ones that come to mind right off the top of my head. And I think those characters have a good character arc because they all changed a lot. And they changed in the sense that, well, let's just start with Neville. Neville changed a lot. He started off as this timid little boy who went to Hogwarts and he didn't know what he was doing. But in the 7th book, he destroyed a Horcrux and was the first one to stand up to the entire army of Voldemort and Voldemort himself. And that's just something that is crazy. Neville went from, the boy to the man, and that's just the biggest change you could ever go through. So that's a very good character arc. And Malfoy. Malfoy is another very good character arc because he started off as just a bully. He didn't really think about other people as, people who had feelings and people who actually did things that would maybe hurt their feelings or actual people. Malfoy didn't think of everyone else as actual people because he thought he was so above them. And in the 7th book, he really was trying to fight for his family and doing what's best for him. And it might not be, the most noble character arc, but he went through a lot of change. And I think Snape is the obvious character arc that is, a wow, because Snape went through probably the biggest change ever. I think also that's the fact that he started off as a boy, a literal boy. I think he was 11 when we first, at the early stages of his life, we saw him at 11, and ended when he was, almost at the end of his life. So he had the biggest character arc, not only because he was a good character, but also because he had the most time that we saw him. And we saw him as someone who didn't like to talk. He, was kind of vying for attention by only a couple people that he thought he would like, and he did, like Lily and maybe a couple of his friends from Slytherin. but it's tough to say how Snape would change like that. But we saw him change quite a bit, actually. He went from, a boy going to Hogwarts, and he didn't like to talk. He was kind of a target for bullying, and he didn't really have, the best life at home. But then he went to someone who was willing to sacrifice his life for his arch nemesis's son. That's just really crazy. That's a really big change, and I think it definitely deserves some claps. So, good job, you did it. But on the flip side of that, there are also the bad character arcs, and those ones are the ones who never really change, and they stay the same person for virtually the entire time. And that's something that you really never want to see, because that is the mark of a bad character, and being a bad character is never something you want to be. So someone who has a bad character arc might be Bellatrix, Voldemort, and I hate to say it, but I think Ron has a bad character arc, and I only say that because those three people never really changed. And Ron, you might say, well, of course he changed. He went, from a boy to destroying Horcruxes. Well, if you think about it, that never really changed him. He just stayed the same person, and he had his spats with Harry, but he came right back just to show that he stayed the same person. That I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Ron was an amazing person to start, and he was an amazing person to end. He just never had anything else in the middle. He stayed the exact same. Bellatrix, same deal, except she was bad in the beginning and worse at the end. So Bellatrix was this really, really mean character. I think we met in the 5th? No, maybe. I don't know. We met her a little later on, and I think if we met her a little earlier, we might have seen a bigger change, but she stayed this ultra loyal person to Voldemort and never wavering and never doing anything else besides serving Voldemort. So never really changed there. And I think Voldemort is the obvious choice for, a bad character arc, because Voldemort stayed the exact same. From the moment he stepped into Hogwarts, he thought, I want to be powerful, I want to live forever, I want to have all the power in the world. And he ended like that, the exact same, which is something you never want to see, because that's horrible. So let's just dive a little deeper into these character arcs and who had good or bad. So let's start with the good. Let's dive into Malfoy's. Let's start with Malfoy's good character arc. So let's think of some specific scenes. I think one of the most telling scenes of Malfoy is that beginning scene when Harry and Malfoy are in the shop, and Madame Malkin's clothing shop, and Malfoy is talking with Harry, but Harry has no idea what he's talking about. And we can see really how much Malfoy is. We can really see his true personality to begin with in that scene. And there is a perfect passage that I think I can read off that will definitely, give it a good picture. So it starts with, "My father's next door buying my books, and mother's up the street looking at wands," said the boy. He had a bored, drawling voice. "Then I'm going to drag them off to look at racing brooms. I don't see why first years can't have their own. I think I'll bully father into getting me one, and I'll smuggle it in somehow." Whoa. So, coming off really strong there, Malfoy is making a big move. He's saying, all right, I am a bully, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to bully my family into doing things that I want them to do. You just don't. You just don't do that, Malfoy. You just don't. And to see Malfoy in that state, to see Malfoy doing those things, I think is a big tell of his character to start with. He is really inconsiderate, and he doesn't pay attention to other people. And he doesn't really think to himself that sometimes he can't have his way, and that might even be better for him. Like smuggling in a broom? I don't know. Maybe it'll get him that, moment gratification. but it won't last. His brain will be taken away, he'll be given detention, a bajillion points will be taken away from Slytherin, and he'll be left off so much worse than he was. So Malfoy is really rash and inconsiderate and really ignorant in his starting stages of character. So he never really started off as this really, deep character. He didn't really start off as someone who really knew what he was doing and could talk about problems and would not get things that he didn't need. And I think that's a really important part of his character, that he evolved from such a dark place. Another telling scene in the first book was when Harry got his Nimbus 2000 at breakfast. I think Malfoy really had this energy of, oh, I got you, and you're gonna get in so much trouble, so don't even try to get out of it. That was his attitude towards how he thought Harry was acting in that moment. And that's another strange part of Malfoy's personality to start off with, is he never really was thinking about himself. Thinking about other people. He never really was thinking to himself, maybe that is allowed. Maybe Harry did something really good, and maybe that's something I shouldn't question. But Malfoy being Malfoy, he just had to do something. So he says, oh, nothing, Potter's just got a broom, when Flitwick is walking by. And Flitwick goes, yeah, nice job. Yeah, I heard the special requirements. And the look on Malfoy's face, even reading the book, you could see it. How surprised and just utterly shocked Malfoy was in that moment. He didn't even consider that was been allowed. And then it was such a shock to Malfoy's system. He was like, what? Why? Why is this happening? And right after he was denied the privilege of a broom, and right after he had to watch Gryffindor crush the competition, that was just so depressing and crushing for Malfoy to see someone else being better than him, more popular, I dare say smarter, has a broom, has good friends, is a good person. That's something that Malfoy will never understand. You can be a good person without having money. You can be a good person without having that one broom, without having that one little trinket that you absolutely need. So that's something that Malfoy didn't notice. He was selfish. He never knew that maybe it could work. Harry, I don't know. I guess we could consider him a half-blood just because he was born by a pureblood family but raised by a completely Muggle family. So he's kind of half and half. But Malfoy has this idea of pureblood superiority. And he never considered that might not be the case. That some people who aren't purebloods are better than purebloods in whatever arena. It could be, just academics. It could be running. They might be a little smarter. They might be a little taller. They might be a little, that might have more money. I mean, I don't know. But the things that Malfoy categorizes in his head as being good, as being on top, as being in charge, might change for other people because he considers them so much lower than himself. And that's why Malfoy could never evolve into a different person when he didn't know that. He was so immature and self-centered, he couldn't acknowledge the successes and victory of other people. Other people do good things. Other people can get that job, can get the raise, can do things that Malfoy will never be able to do. And that fact is the precise reason of why Malfoy could never evolve into the character we want him to be. So Malfoy never really evolved past that point, and it took him a while to do that. And moving right on to the second book, I don't think there is a single quote that can sum up exactly how Malfoy felt. Well, okay, I take that back. I think there is one when the trio stumbles upon the written message on the wall. Malfoy and the rest of the school stumbles upon that point as well, with the trio standing there looking really guilty. And Malfoy says, "Enemies of the air beware. You'll be next, mudbloods." Yeah, that really summed it up. And there were a ton of other instances, but they weren't together in the same paragraph. But that was a really interesting quote. And on the surface, it seems to be the same as if you were to dig really deep. And that's something that you never want to see. So Malfoy has a lot of great lines that really sum up his character, and you can just look at the quote at face glance and take it as that. And that value will be the same if you go and look deeper and deeper into the quote to really pick apart what that means. So let's just do that. Let's pick apart that quote. So, "You'll be next, mudbloods." Face value will say that Malfoy doesn't really like mudbloods, and he wants them to be, not there anymore. And if you go a little deeper, you might be thinking, well, he might be a little insecure about mudbloods sometimes being better than him. I don't know, cough, cough, Hermione. And if you go even deeper than that, he might be thinking, mudbloods are inferior to myself, and I think they should not be here. That's the same. That's the exact same of every single thing that we just said, which is something that if you were to do that for a quote and it was bad every time you picked every single layer apart, that's how you know that that character is not the right person and you don't want to hang out with that guy. So Malfoy's character arc, all in all, was very strange, and that is also summed up in the third book, when Malfoy really never had a big moment. There was no, Malfoy this, Malfoy that. It was really just the things that he caused that were bad. And that is a very dangerous place to be. We saw Malfoy evolve in a very bad way. There's not a better word for that. He just didn't have the better character arc. He never really did anything. And his attitude towards his actions in life in the third book was more towards, I'm in control and you can never take that control away from me, and not, alright, I'm going to try to grow as a person and be the bigger man. Nope, none of those thoughts ever crossed his mind. So we ask ourselves, why? Why would he think that he was the better person? Why would he think those things? Well, there are a couple options for that. We know that Malfoy knew of something. We knew that something was going on with Sirius Black and Malfoy was involved. But we just don't know how, and we never really got to the bottom of that. If you think about it, Malfoy was completely annoying Harry. That was his life goal. But he never really revealed why or how he even knew. And we could pretty much infer that it was completely his father, but I don't know. Malfoy had a lot of decisions that he made that year that were questionable, I guess you could put it that way, and he never really made the things that he wanted to have happen. He never really sought them out, like Sirius Black. He said, I would go after him if it were me, and I wouldn't even try to wait. I'll be really mad. He never did that. And there are two scenes I have in mind that really accentuate this difference of in control and believing he's in control. And the first one is when they go on their first trip to Hogsmeade. Malfoy, Crabbe, and a friend go to the Shrieking Shack, and they're looking at it from afar. And Harry and Ron, that's the wrong scene. Ron and Hermione are looking at the shack, and then Malfoy comes up the hill with a couple of friends, and they start a fight. And Ron goes, go away, whatever. But Malfoy's like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna go. I'm better than you. You're gonna have to leave now. And then Harry comes, and he has his invisibility. I don't know why I can never say that word. And he has his invisibility cloak, and he throws snowballs out of the woods right into Malfoy's face. And the moment Malfoy is not in control, you know. And so does Malfoy. He has this instantaneous shift of, you know what, yeah, Weasley, get out of here. And, oh my gosh, something's happening. And he was terrified. He was squealing. And he was getting, like, dragged around, and there was mud everywhere. And that was just the absolute worst opportunity for Malfoy, because his lack of control was exploited. He was shown to be this horrible person, and he didn't have a in-between. He had just a facade going, and he was confident, he was cocky, and he was like, yeah, I'm better than you. What are you going to do about it? But it all came crumbling down right when the ghosts came. And the second scene I have in mind is when Malfoy was looking at Hagrid's hut when the execution came. And I think everyone knows of this scene. This is the favorite scene. Hermione goes up to Malfoy, whips out her wand, and points it right at Malfoy. And that shift was, a millisecond. It was a millisecond. Because Malfoy was all, yeah, I've heard this so many times. He's like, oh yeah, come to see the show. And then right when Hermione goes, you, beep, 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 beep. That was the best line. She whips out her wand, and Malfoy's crying. He's crying. He's up against the wall. His hands are up, and he's just like, no, not me. And Hermione decides, you know what? Fine. Then she takes her wand away. Boom, he's back. Ha 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 ha, you're too scared. Turns around, punches Malfoy, and he runs away. He just has this shift that's a millisecond. I still cannot believe how fast that was. And he doesn't have an in-between. Malfoy doesn't have that switch that's like, all right, this is going to be, I'm not going to be, oh yeah, that's a good dress, or I love your dress. He never has something that's in the middle. He never, ever does. And that's why Malfoy never had a good character arc in the beginning. But it improved a lot. And we see that jumping to the 7th book in the final scene. Well, final book, rather. The final set of scenes when the dark side has apparently won, and Voldemort is like, Draco, come on. Let's just, start. And then Lucius is like, come on, let's, get out of here. Let's go. And Malfoy does it. He comes over, and then there's an awesome improvised thing by Ralph Fiennes where he hugs. It's so awkward. But then they escape. When Harry dramatically falls off of Hagrid and then runs away, and Voldemort does his, I'm sorry for your ears, but the Malfoy family escapes, and they are caring about each other, and maybe that's selfish, and maybe that isn't something that the Malfoy family is proud of, but they were sticking up for each other, and that's really something that is important. Standing up for the people that are close to you, and that's exactly what Malfoy did in the end, so that's why I give Malfoy the stamp of approval. Good job. Now, let's take a hop, skip, and a jump over to bad character arc lane. And, we gotta start with Voldemort. Voldemort's character arc was terrible. It was trash can fire terrible. I don't even understand how a character arc could be that bad. What? Voldemort started as a self-centered, power-hungry, Horcrux-seeking, on top of the world thinking, bad person, evil being person. That's it. And guess what he stayed as? That exact thing that I can't remember what I said, so I'll just say that. And I don't understand how that could ever be possible. Voldemort even said himself that he was someone who wanted to be immortal. He wanted to be the most powerful person on the planet. And although he may have succeeded in that arena, there are always consequences. Being immortal is something that you have to take life from. You have to reset the balance. You can never get something out of one thing and have to sacrifice another. Nothing works like that. For example, Horcruxes. You can live more, but your soul is split. Even Voldemort's killing everyone. He wants to be immortal, but he has to kill people to reset the balance. The bottom line is Voldemort stayed the same. He never changed. And let's just start with the first book and examine some quotes there. We don't have much choice. We don't have a lot of choice for quotes from the first book, but there is a perfect one. And it isn't exactly a quote, it's just a message. Voldemort has just unveiled himself by telling Quirrell, let me speak to Harry face to face. He said that in such a weird way because he was like in a turban. And Quirrell unwrapped Voldemort from his head and he speaketh to Harry. And they had a very intense conversation and Voldemort said, Harry, join me. We can see your parents again and you will be so happy. But Harry, of course, does not fall for those tricks. And I think that's a good example of Voldemort's beginning of a bad character arc. Voldemort is always trying to get other people onto his side. He's always trying to say, hey, it's great over here. Come on. We're opening up shop first time. Come on in. Yeah, but that is almost never the case. It's a little secret there. If Voldemort asks you to go to join the dark side, don't take the job. It's a bad deal. So, yeah. But Harry exactly recognized that trick. And did he sign the papers? Did he take that job? No, he did not. And that is a good decision because Voldemort is just trying to get Harry onto his side so he can kill Harry. He can gain control of Harry so he will be an easier target. And that's carried right into the second book when we don't exactly see Voldemort, but it might as well be Voldemort because it is. And this basically sets the bad character arc status into the foundation is made and they start building the house on the bad character arc of Voldemort in the second book because the memory of Tom Riddle in his 5th year comes and oh my gosh, it is the same. It is the exact same of Voldemort because it's not. That is just the beauty. It is precisely Voldemort, but it is the exact opposite. It is Voldemort when he is young and he has actual hair and actual eyes and his toenails aren't pointed. I don't know how that happened, but just, it's crazy how different but similar the Tom Riddle that comes out of the diary is, because Tom Riddle comes out and is all, hey guys, you know what? I'm going to unleash this big monster and I'm going to, take away all the mudbloods because they don't deserve to be here. What? Did we see that before? Yeah, Malfoy. But he changed. He was a different person. That is a good character arc. But did Voldemort change? No, he didn't. And that's a bad character arc since it's a masterclass. So Tom Riddle was a completely different person from Voldemort. And that's a really important thing to remember. But it's something that if we do think about it really carefully, it really is bad for Voldemort. Because Tom Riddle is Voldemort and Voldemort is Tom Riddle, but they are such a different stages in their lives that it would be apparent that they are completely different people, but they aren't. That just goes to show you how Voldemort never was even planning. It wasn't even a glimmer in his eye that, you know what, I'm going to be a different person. I'm going to be good. I'm going to volunteer and, pick up trash along the highway. No. He never, ever thought of that. He always just thought, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And I'm going to be so powerful and be immortal and you can never stop me. Yeah. Those are the kind of things that Voldemort could never really get around. And he always stayed the same throughout the entire series. And he died as a power-hungry, Horcrux-seeking, self-centered, and, I don't know, cute clip of me saying that person. And he stayed that way ever since. If he stayed alive, I don't know, I think he would still be the same person. So now we're moving on to the category of people who had middle character arcs. People who weren't really necessarily good, but people who weren't necessarily bad. And that is a pretty widespread category, but I think I have a pretty good example. Hermione. I think Hermione had a middle character arc because if you think about it, she had her moments. She had her big moments. She was a completely different person at the end, but I only categorize her as a middle character arc and not a good character arc because she didn't go through some major change. She didn't go through this, going in and coming out as a completely different person. I think hers was a very normal character arc, and it is middle because it's not quite bad. I think if there's an average, it would be, if there was a grade from 1 to 5, everyone would be about a 3. And Hermione is more of a 4. I think that because Hermione started off as a know-it-all. And Hermione, I'm sorry if you're listening to this, I don't mean it, but it's true. And she started off as someone who would always give the right answer, always raise her hand, always participate in getting the most points, being a model student. But she really grew out of that in the third book, when she realized that being a good student isn't raising your hand, isn't participating, isn't knowing everything, it's knowing yourself and knowing how you can progress as a good witch. And Hermione really embraced that side of her as a really smart and capable person, and she really decided, I'm going to take advantage of my situation and I'm going to be a really good witch. And that is a really, really good thing for Hermione to do, but that's something that a lot of people do. And I'm not saying Hermione is, just like everyone else, but she did it in a really interesting way. And the only reason she is up on the scale was she destroyed a Horcrux in the 7th book and really went on a journey. But the Horcrux really isn't a big part of it. The big part is her parents. She had to obliviate her own parents and send them to, Australia, I think, which is crazy. Just so if she died, she would know that her parents were completely okay. And that's just something that, if you were to go up and if you were to go away for a while in a dangerous place, I don't think any person would just obliviate their loved ones, so if something happened to them, they would be fine. And, that's just something that Hermione did so well, and with such care, and just such a big sacrifice, that I think if we didn't give her a bad character arc or a good character arc, yeah, that would be a crime. So, I think Hermione definitely a 4 out of 5 character arc scale. And I think this is a good scale. So, actually, let's move this thing up to 10. So, Hermione is an 8 out of 10 on the character arc scale. Malfoy is I think he's a 9 out of 10 on the character arc scale. Voldemort is a 3 on the character arc scale. I am putting him in the lowest of low. So, yeah. Let's move on to people who should have had good character arcs. This is an interesting category because there are a lot of people who should have had good character arcs, but we just didn't get to know them. And I think a really good example of someone who had a really good character arc was Mcgonagall. Professor Mcgonagall, we all love her. She is a really amazing and independent woman. She really does a lot of great things, and I think she should have had a amazing character arc. But we just didn't get to know her as well as we should have. We didn't get to know the inner fold of her life. I think Fantastic Beasts was the only time we saw her before Harry Potter. And now the only thing we know is she doesn't like people talking a lot. Great. Very informative. Now I'm going to give her a million out of 10 for character arc scale. That was sarcastic. I do not. But McGonagall definitely should have had a good character arc. And I think we can all agree that she might have, but we just don't really know enough. And you might be thinking, of course we know enough. She was around us for the entirety of the entire series. But that isn't enough. We've never been inside her head. We never know what she's thinking, how she acts, why she does things. But it's the things that she does that we can make some kind of assumption about her. And I think we can say that she is loyal and protective and smart, of course, and someone who is willing to fight fiercely for her family, her loved ones, for Hogwarts, for her home. And that's something why I think we can agree that if we got to know McGonagall more, there isn't going to be a malicious thought anywhere. So I think McGonagall should have had a really, really, really good character arc, and maybe even better than Malfoy's. But who knows? So now let's move on to who might have had a bad character arc. And there are a couple in there that I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't say their names, but okay, let's just say this. So who should have had a bad character arc? Well, it's kind of a strange situation here. I think Lucius should have had a bad character arc. And I think Lucius should have had a bad character arc because he is a terrible person. He is a terrible, horrible person that we never really get to know. He just does the bad things that is classic villainy, and he isn't the villain, but he's just a really bad person. And Lucius is a very interesting character also because he didn't evolve, he didn't do anything else, but I think the only thing that saves him from half good or half bad is his fighting for family, just like Draco. But he didn't change, so still not exactly good. So I think he should have had a bad character arc. But there's one other really interesting character that we haven't covered, and I think we should definitely end with Dumbledore. What kind of character arc did Professor Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore have? Well, let's think. He started as a very wise and kind man, and he ended as a very kind and wise man. Are you seeing the trend here? But I think it's a medium. I think Dumbledore has an 8 out of 10 on the character arc scale. And that's because Dumbledore stayed the same. No changes, no nothing. Just Dumbledore the entire time. And the only thing that saves him from a full-on bad character arc was all the things he did, in the sense that he has to really protect Harry with a lot of energy, and he used up so much of his life just to protect Harry. And he did have to change somewhat to do those things, and to fight off Voldemort, and to defeat the forces of evil, and to will himself to say, Snape, please. So Dumbledore really changed in the sense that he molded himself for success, and he made the right decisions that led to a successful defeat of Voldemort. And that is why Dumbledore is a medium. Not good, not bad, just a medium. So there you have it. I mean, that's the episode. If you liked it, if you're still here, thanks for listening. I mean, new episodes every week, so I guess you can listen to another one. But okay, let's just think about this. I think this is going to be a good time. We're going to have a lot of good episodes. And stay tuned, because next week we will be talking about scenes that I think should have been in the movies, because there were so many good scenes in the book, but they just didn't come in the movie. So stay tuned for that. Well, if you have any questions, comments, or subjects that you would like to hear on the podcast, definitely send me an email. My email is ThePotterDiscussion@gmail.com. That is ThePotterDiscussion@gmail.com. If you could just scroll down in your podcast app of choice, tap those 5 stars, or even leave a written review, that could help me out more than you could ever know, and it helps other listeners find this show. Also, make sure you subscribe so you never miss another episode of this amazing content. I'm taking suggestions, so if you want any anythings on the podcast, again, email ThePotterDiscussion@gmail.com. I'll get up a link where you can send a voice submission and maybe be featured on the show. Who knows? So, yeah. I hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, use information to your advantage, and I will see you later.